Let's talk about the Panama Canal. It's more than just a marvel of engineering. It's a living artery, pulsing with the lifeblood of global trade. Every day, thousands of workers, engineers, and sailors depend on its smooth operation. And so do billions of people around the world who never give it a second thought. It's a massive shortcut that keeps ships from sailing around South America, a silent, essential artery of global commerce. Without it, the journey between the Atlantic and Pacific would be weeks longer, costing companies millions and reshaping the very map of international shipping. For over a century, it's been the reliable plumbing of international trade, so fundamental we barely notice it, until it stops. Generations have watched ships glide through its locks, carrying everything from cars to coffee, oil to electronics, connecting continents and economies. On an ordinary Tuesday, that's exactly what happened. The day began like any other, with the usual hum of engines and the steady rhythm of commerce, until everything changed in an instant. The United States, citing a vague but urgent national security threat, announced the immediate and indefinite closure of the canal. The world watched, stunned, as the news rippled across continents and headlines flashed in every language. No timeline, no details, just a terse statement, shrouded in secrecy, leaving everyone from shipping magnates to everyday workers in the dark. Just a stark order that slammed the brakes on one of the world's busiest maritime routes. Ships that had traveled thousands of miles were suddenly stranded, their crews left with nothing but uncertainty. The world's commercial lifeline was severed, plunging the international community into shock and confusion. Boardrooms and governments reeled. How could this happen? The ripple effects were immediate. Stock markets trembled, supply chains buckled, and families wondered if their livelihoods were at risk. The canal isn't just infrastructure, it's a symbol of global cooperation. Nations have long set aside differences to keep it running, understanding its importance to every corner of the globe. For the US to unilaterally shut it down was an act of extraordinary power, echoing a bygone era of American dominance. It sent a message that the old rules could be rewritten in a heartbeat, and that no alliance or treaty was immune to sudden change. Whatever was found in the canal was so significant, it justified upending the global order. Rumors swirled. Was it a threat, a discovery, or something else entirely? The world could only speculate. The constant flow of ships ground to a halt, billions in goods stranded, and entire industries braced for impact. Ports grew quiet, and the usual clamor of commerce faded into uneasy silence. The world was left with a chilling reminder: our interconnected world is fragile, and power can shift in an instant. The closure of a single waterway had exposed the vulnerability at the heart of our global system. The silence that followed was deafening. In that quiet, the world waited, holding its breath, uncertain of what would come next. The economic shockwave was immediate and brutal. Oil prices spiked nearly 10% overnight as tankers faced detours thousands of miles longer. Shipping companies scrambled, rerouting around Cape Horn or crowding the already busy Suez Canal. Container costs soared, promising empty shelves and higher prices worldwide. Thousands of seafarers were stranded off Panama, supplies dwindling with no answers in sight. Ports clogged, cities overwhelmed, and a humanitarian crisis unfolded on the decks of hundreds of ships. China, the EU, and others demanded answers, questioning the legality of the US move. Panama's government stayed silent, deepening the mystery and fueling global anxiety. The gears of global trade ground to a halt, and the world waited for an explanation that never came. In the absence of facts, speculation exploded. The leading theory, a massive cyber attack. The canal's automated systems could have been hacked, threatening disaster. Others whispered of a covert military incident, an intercepted submarine, a smuggled weapon, or a high-value operative. Some feared an environmental catastrophe, a toxic spill or radioactive leak, forcing a total lockdown. Fringe theories ran wild: alien objects, corporate sabotage, rogue intelligence. The truth was buried under layers of rumor, but the anxiety was real. When the world's engine stops and no one explains why, people fill the silence with their worst fears. The uncertainty was as destabilizing as the closure itself. To grasp the US action, you need the canal's fraught history. The US built the canal by orchestrating Panama's independence, then ran it as a colonial outpost for decades. Resentment simmered, erupting in 1964's Martyrs' Day riots, Panamanians demanding sovereignty. The 1977 Torrijos-Carter treaties finally set a path for Panama to take control, culminating in the 1999 handover. Yet, the US retained the right to intervene militarily to protect the canal's neutrality, a clause that suddenly felt relevant again. The 2025 shutdown ripped open old wounds, reminding Panama and the world that American power still shadows the canal. The handover was meant to close a chapter, but the crisis proved the past is never truly buried. The canal remains a symbol of both national pride and lingering foreign influence. Since 1999, Panama has run the canal with remarkable success. Critics doubted Panama's ability, but the Panama Canal Authority proved them wrong, improving efficiency, safety, and even expanding the canal for larger ships. The 2016 expansion was a triumph, cementing Panama's role in global trade. The recent U.S. intervention was a jarring contrast to Panama's steady stewardship. Panama managed droughts and crises with transparency, while the U.S. imposed an abrupt, opaque shutdown. Political tensions flared, but Panama's resolve only grew stronger. 25 years of competent management became a rallying point for national pride and sovereignty. In a digital age defined by instant communication and high-speed data, the Panama Canal remains a vital artery for the physical movement of goods. Despite all our technological advances, the world still relies on this century-old waterway to keep commerce flowing smoothly. Nearly 40% of U.S. container traffic passes through it, linking the American heartland to the world. From electronics and clothing to cars and food, the canal is the invisible thread connecting American consumers and businesses to global markets. It's essential for trade between Asia, the Americas, and Europe, shaping not just ship design, but also the very layout of ports and the strategies of global logistics companies. The canal's influence stretches far beyond Panama, touching every continent and every major economy. Its tolls and efficiency set prices for countless products worldwide. When the canal runs smoothly, supply chains are predictable and costs are kept in check. But when there's a hiccup, the ripple effects are felt on store shelves everywhere. The closure doesn't just delay ships, it disrupts entire supply chains, adding weeks and millions in costs. Factories may halt production, retailers face empty shelves, and shipping companies scramble to find alternatives. Rerouting around Cape Horn is a logistical nightmare, burning extra fuel, risking spoilage of perishable goods, and throwing carefully planned schedules into chaos. The detour is not just longer, but far more dangerous and expensive. The canal isn't a convenience, it's a fundamental gear in the machine of modern capitalism. Without it, the global economy grinds and stutters, revealing just how interconnected and fragile our systems really are. Its sudden unavailability forces a costly, complex rethink of global trade. Companies must adapt quickly, rerouting shipments, renegotiating contracts, and absorbing unexpected losses. The world is learning the hard way. This century-old waterway still holds the keys to the global economy. Its legacy is not just historical, but urgently relevant to every nation and every industry today. And right now, those keys are out of reach, reminding us all just how much we depend on this narrow stretch of water to keep the world turning. The U.S. closure of the canal ignited a diplomatic firestorm. America, long the champion of free navigation, now stood accused of hypocrisy, undermining its own message. Panama was trapped: condemn the U.S. and risk its alliance, or stay silent and lose face. The crisis opened doors for rivals like China to expand influence in Latin America. It sent a chilling message. Treaties and sovereignty can be swept aside by superpower interests. Trust in American assurances eroded, and nations began rethinking their reliance on global choke points. The world's supply chains, built on a handful of vulnerable arteries, suddenly seemed dangerously exposed. The era of taking these global lifelines for granted is over. Weeks passed, and the world waited anxiously for answers, but the true nature of the terrifying discovery remained shrouded in secrecy. Rumors swirled, speculation ran wild, and governments scrambled to piece together what had really happened behind the closed gates of the Panama Canal. The real revelation, however, was not a single event but a sobering truth: the fragility of the global system, how quickly the intricate web of trade and commerce could unravel when a single vital artery was severed. The shutdown marked a turning point, a sudden, jarring end to an era of seamless globalization that many had taken for granted. The world was forced to confront the reality that the systems we rely on are not as unbreakable as we once believed. Efficiency, once the holy grail of modern industry, had come at the cost of resilience. Just-in-time supply chains, celebrated for their speed and precision, now revealed themselves to be exquisitely vulnerable to disruption. In boardrooms and warehouses around the globe, the world began shifting to just-in-case models, accepting higher costs, more inventory, and slower delivery in exchange for greater security and peace of mind. For Panama, the crisis was more than an economic shock. It was a test of sovereignty and identity, a rare opportunity to assert its place on the world stage and redefine its relationship with the global community. The silent canal, once a bustling artery of commerce, became a haunting symbol of both vulnerability and resolve, a reminder of how quickly fortunes can change. The lesson was clear. Our interconnected world is a choice, not a guarantee. The ties that bind us are strong, but they are not unbreakable. The real discovery in the end was that the foundations of global order are far shakier than we ever dared to imagine. The world's confidence had been shaken, and the old certainties no longer held. As the world scrambles to adapt to this new reality, the silent waters of the Panama Canal await our answer. Will we rebuild stronger or remain haunted by the lessons of this crisis?